everybody, welcome to live stream number 45. Today it's Wednesday. It is awesome Wednesday. We're going to get to that a little bit later. It is August 16th, 2017. And like I said, live stream number 45. Thank you so much for taking the time to join today's live stream. Today, we're going to talk about sheet metal. And I wrote in the description that it's the new sheet metal and cardboard box tool. Well, it's not really, I guess, sheet metal is what it's called in the industry, but you can use it for other things, like cardboard boxes, like plastic, like whatever you kind of like want to bend, fold and unfold, you can do with the sheet metal tool inside of Fusion. That was released last week. Was it just a week ago? Or maybe it was a week yesterday, I can't remember. But we're going to talk about the sheet metal tool. That was the big thing in that update. Yesterday I covered some of the other things that was in last week's update. So if you didn't check out yesterday's live stream, you can do that. And I'm jumping around. Last week, right after the release, I shared a video on K-factor, what is important when you are talking sheet metal or card box tool or plastic bending thing. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but definitely be aware that there's a whole live stream about that from last week that will go into details. I'll reference it later on. Okay, I can see we already got a bunch of people in here. We've been on for a minute, and we got like 20 people in here. Great to see Bob. Great to see Tommy, Angelus. We got Street Cop Gear here. So many great people. Really appreciate you taking the time to join the live stream. In the chat in there, and for you who are watching the recording, also thank you so much. If you haven't already, really appreciate if you will hit that subscribe button, and then right next to it you can hit the notification bell, and that should be the way that you know that these live streams are on. This week we're doing them all at 3 p.m. Eastern, so tomorrow and also Friday, so got a couple more for this week. Like I said, it's Awesome Wednesday. Today, we're going to talk about Titan, a good friend of mine, Titan Gilroy. I'm going to wait till the end. We're going to jump into this day's topic. We're going to explore the new sheet metal tool. So, let's get going. All right, let's get into Fusion. So, I guess whenever you got to do some kind of a model, you should always find, something fancy. And most CAD companies, when they release a new tool like sheet metal, they always have some fancy data set. But I did, and we had that with this cool CNC router, if you watch the new video. But what I did was I walked over in my garage and I looked at my lawnmower. And this is my attempt to model an exhaust kind of thing for a lawnmower. Yeah, you can see I didn't spend too much time on it. But that's kind of like the lawnmower. And then I kind of made a box behind it that somewhat resembles the outline of a motor, or like half of a motor. Just to take up some space. And that's actually, whenever you're working inside of CAD, making solid blocks to resemble other things can be really, really helpful, as you will see kind of going on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this new sheet metal tool that you will find under the drop down up here. So you normally start in model, and then you will go into to the sheet metal tool where we can model up this guard that goes around the exhaust to make sure that nobody burn or their fingers or whatever they're doing. So I'm gonna go into the sheet metal environment. You will see that the menu up here changes a little bit, and what you will find in here is that if you ever used any other CAD tools, there's normally a bunch of different tools in here. The way the developers did this, what they started out with is Flange Tool. Now I know that there's going to come more sheet metal tools as the product is getting developed. This was kind of revision 1, right? This is the first time it's just been released. I know the development team is going to do an awesome job adding more things, but this Flange tool in here is actually pretty dang cool. Now, if you have never worked with the sheet metal tool before, ever done sheet metal before, you normally start modeling the end result where you want to end up, and then you kind of like flatten it out to be flat in the end, so you can cut out the shape and then bend it. So you'd run in a bent stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my origin here, and this origin is actually placed right in the middle of this exhaust kind of thing. So I'm going to start a sketch on that face here. It doesn't really matter. And I'm going to go up here to the view cube. I'm just going to rotate it on. I don't know. Whenever I'm modeling things up, in my mind, I always vision that I'm going to modeling in a certain way. And so you can always use these arrows up here to kind of like rotate it around. So I want to stand on top on my lawnmower looking down. And I'm just going to sketch a standard line. And we could have done this in the model environment too. I'm just going to sketch a line that kind of like goes, vertical out here. It's going to go along, and then I'm going to go ahead here and just kind of like give it an angle here. This is going to kind of like be the outline of the guard. And then now I can start adding some dimensions. So I'm going to hit D for dimension on my keyboard. Little shortcut. And I'm just going to give it like a distance away from the lawnmower here, or the exhaust. And I'm not quite sure what would be the right distance here in real life. Half an inch, that might be a little tight. I don't know. I should have made some measurements out on my real lawnmower. Whatever. And let's go ahead here and add some kind of an angle here. 150 maybe. Huh. That might be a little steep. 140 was came up with. This is kind of like the normal kind of design environment we're working with here, right? And I'm just gonna add some kind of another dimension. I don't know. I'm just looking to fully define the sketch, what you should always do. So I've done that. Now, so what we have right now, if I just stop the sketch, I literally just sketched those 3 lines on that center plane there. I hope that makes sense. Kind of like outlining where my sheet metal part's going to go. So I'm going to go into this Flange tool, and I'm going to select that. And it will, if you have chaining on, it will go in and select those 3. And then I get these arrows, and I can kind of like start moving up here. And you can see on the screen that I start getting, let me just move this one over a little bit. I start getting a sheet metal kind of like layout here. And this is like just like if you're using the extrude or the push-pull command, that you get different options. So I can go one direction here at distance. You'll see up over here. I could go 2 sides. So I can go in a certain direction one way and another direction the other way, or you can go symmetrical, and then it kind of like will fit whatever you're gonna do here. So if I go over here on the right side, I would assume that I want that guy to kind of like at least cover the lawnmower exhaust. So 2 inches seems like that should work. Also making sure, if I go up and look at the top of this one here, if I zoom in a little bit, notice that there is a thickness side to this. So right now, my sketch line is running on the inside of this, and that's what I would think you normally would. But you could change it to be on the other side. So now you can see that it kind of like pushes it within the sketch line, or symmetrical. So now it's right on the center. I guess that's kind of like depending on what you prefer. I would think that my distance in here that I added that line is going to be the inside of that here. So with that here, I just realized that I did one thing I don't want to do. I actually did this right in my upper level here. I actually want this sheet metal part to be its own component. So I'm going to go ahead here and create it. But when I go in here, this body here, I'm actually going to right click and say I want to create a new component from, see, and I hadn't tested that out. You can't do that. Okay, haha, I hadn't tested that out. I actually didn't want to create this inside of here. I wanted to create it as its own component. I kind of forgot that when I was getting all excited about doing the sheet metal part. So if I go in here, right click, see now I got a sheet metal component in here. Now I maybe just screwed things up a little. Let's go back to the sketch. It's always good to see that I'm also messing up, right? Let's go ahead and do a sheet metal here. And I'm going to call this one sheet metal. It should change the icon in a second. So this is its own component. But right now it don't have the sketches in it. Now that sketch exists in the upper level. And I can't propagate that one to my knowledge down here. Okay. What could we do? We could open up a sketch in here and then just project them down. But you know what? I don't want to do that. I am just going to go in here and resketch my sketch here. Now you get to see me do it all one more time. Oh, what the heck. Create a line out here, over here, and over there. That's actually why that's why I like live streams. They're not so dang polished, right? So let's make this one 750 like this. I am going to go over here, and I maybe have to actually play around a little bit with that because maybe there was a better way to do this that I am not aware of. What is good practice? Let's move that one over and do a dimension from here to here. Okay, back to where I were before. I'm gonna stop the sketch here and let's go up and do the Flange Tool here. Let's try it one more time. So I decided I was gonna go symmetrical. Move that up there, and we agreed on the 2 inches would be right here, and hit OK. All right, so now I got one of those my own component. That was what I was going for. I forgot to create that component in there. Hit me up in the comments if we need to. I have made other videos on this. So what we have now is we have kind of like this shield here on the top that we kind of like drew up with these sketch lines. What is all is kind of all great. Now, what you will find inside of the sheet metal here is a couple of things that is important. One is that you gotta pick up what kind of thickness that was added to this, and that goes back to the whole K factor. It goes up to this rule tool in here. So if you go back and watch my previous that I did last week on the K factor, I'm talking a little bit about this. That you can kind of like it defaults to steel in millimeters. You can go over here and you can either edit that rule. What will give us what will give us this little dialog box here that will tell you can choose what thickness, the K factor, and there's a bunch of other things in here. I'm going to come back to this in a little bit when we do the cardboard box in a little bit. So that's one thing. Now, the other thing you want to be aware of is that, like right now, this one is folded, right? And what we're going to end up with is what is called a flat pattern. So that's where the K factor is taken into consideration, where if you're bending something, you actually have to have it a little bit smaller because when you're bending it, you're stretching it to get the right size. Then you also have this unfold. So there's two different here. There's an unfold and create a flat pattern. Create a flat pattern is normally the last thing you do to kind of like get the right dimensions for the plate you're going to be cutting before you fold it. Unfold gives us a tool to kind of like work with the sheet metal in both bended and unbended. So what I mean by that is right now this thing is kind of folded up in two edges. If I select that unfold, that is found right on the modify. And if I select this face here and I have unfold all bends, it will actually find the two bands that was in this case here. They're kind of like shown in green. And now it's kind of in a flattened state, right? So now it's kind of like been flattened. And I have a little refold faces up here. If I click on that one, I'm kind of like back to where I was before. And it actually appears in kind of like a timeline fashion in here. So what the unfold lets you do, it lets you continue working with this model. So if I just hide the sheet metal for a second, you can see that the exhaust kind of like has an angle going up, and I might want to reuse that have that in my sheet metal part. So what I can do is I can start a sketch. I'm back into sheet metal, right click, create sketch, and then I can project the edge from that exhaust over. So I hit P for project. And if I click there, I kind of get that line over there, what is pretty cool. Now, one thing you need to be aware of when we're looking at the sheet metal unfolded is that each phase, each individual fold is kind of its own face. So this is a face, this is a face, and this is a face. And that means that when we're going ahead to use different commands, they will actually react almost like different parts instead of like one flat sheet. And let me show you what I mean by that. If I wanted to create this cutout to go across, I'm going to hit Alpha line, and I draw a line across here over to this edge, and I hit Q for cutting this portion off. I can actually only select that face where that sketch belongs on, where that sketch are on. You will actually see that when I hover over the other ones, that sketch line I just created across there, it doesn't interact with it. I would almost have to create new sketches in each of those faces to do that. So that's one of the things to know. Now, of course, there's always ways around that. So what I did, let me delete that line again, was I just created that line to come across to the first intersection where the bend is. And let me just make sure that it's actually horizontal and not at an angle. There we go. Now, if I hit Q, I can make the cut through here. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know that since if I like to use through all, because then no matter how thick I make this sheet metal part, it will always have to cut through. However, since I have the two other components visible in here, when I hit through all, it will actually cut through everything else. That's not what I want. So what you should do is just hide the two other components over here while you're doing that operation. So hit Q for press pull, do cut, and say all. So right now it's only the thickness, but now if we ever change the thickness, then it will not be an issue. Hit OK, and then I can turn the two other ones back on. The cut will not have affected those, but I still have that one portion over here that I want to get rid of. So what I did was I just went ahead here and I right click on that face, inner face there, say create another sketch on that, and again use P for project, and I just stole or borrowed those edges, inside edges here, right there, and now when I hit Q for press pull, I can literally just cut that portion off there like that. So that was kind of like how I cut through those sections without having to create new sketches. So what do we got now? Well, if we go back here and we refold the part, you will now see that we kind of like now have formed the sheet metal with that bend. If I look right straight of it, we now have that angle going up and going across. So I hope that is helpful. Another thing that I need to add to this is a couple of mounts to actually add to this guard here. And that's where that flange tool, again, are handy. So I use the flange tool first, right on my initial sketch. I'm going to use the exact same tool, and I'm going to select the outside edge here. And if I go and look at the top of it again, you will see that it breaks out another flange right there. So just by selecting an edge, I get that, that right there. Now, of course, I can work with this. So there's an angle in here. I could also grab this little icon here that is sitting right down here, and I can actually just move it up. So you get like these flexibilities that is pretty amazing. So I'm going to make this 40. Also, there's a lot of stuff going on in this flange tool that is awesome. Also be aware of that you can control the bend position. So you can see right now, because I have it on the inside, it actually is flush with the motor, what is exactly what I want. But you actually have other options. So if I select the outside, you can see that it would bend on the outside here, or adjacent, it will bring it right to that edge. So definitely be aware of that there is these options in here for that. Now, other things that is in here, I know this is a lot, but another thing you will see in here is up here on the flange tool, there's also different options to work with the width. So right now it's selected the full edge. I could actually go in here and select symmetric. So if I click on that, you will actually see that I can adjust that little lip there that I want to screw into symmetrically. I could also do it to two sides, kind of like this. And then the last one is called two offset. So that is offset from kind of like the edge here. So I might go in here and make this one a ½ inch down here. And then I'm going to move the other one up here, grab the arrow, move up here. And what is going to make offset number 2? Maybe 1.5 inches. Might be good. That looks pretty good there, I think. Now, I haven't done anything with the length of this one yet. And of course, you have all these dialogues over here. Let's make that 1 inch. So you see how easy, just with that little flange tool, I have now, not only I took my original sketch, but I'm actually start moving around and creating these other flanges. Another thing you need to know is that you can override the original rules that you had inside of your table. So if I go in and check that box, I can change things like my bend radius. I can also do the relief. So if I check that one, you will see right now it has kind of like a straight cut in relief in each corner. And I can control those. I can also go in and make it round. Depends on what kind of sheet metal tool you have, or tear it. So now it's just tiered right at the edge. So there's a lot in this flange tool. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit here OK, and you can kind of like see how we now have created that lip on that side, so we can mount it in here. Let's go over and do the same thing, repeat it over here, because repetition is key in all learning, as Zig Ziglar said. So hit the flange tool again, select the outer edge, and I get to create those flanges. And again, I can control kind of like how I want this whole thing to work in a very dynamic kind of fashion. I'm going to make the height of this one also 1 inch. And I'm going to go back into the two offsets. So the first one here was minus ½ inch. And the second one here, move that up here, probably about minus 2.5. I'm kind of like winging that. And again, I can control the inside and the outside. So let's just check that from the top, that we are actually flush with the motor. Well, we are. And if I'm going to make the same relief, hit the checkbox down at the bottom, and you can go in and override whatever you set it up with in the rules in here. Hit OK, And we now kind of like have added those two in here. Now you will see I created these after the fold and unfold in here. So I could actually have chosen to have created them, move the cursor back to the unfold stage and have added those two flanges there. Or I can just go in and create another unfold if I want to, and it will just add those extra step in there. So now you can have multiple fold and unfold in your history, or it can actually be kind of nice. Now the last thing I want to show on this one here is this is also where you will add the things as the holes, of course, to add the bolts in here. Or you could do like this one here had some slots in it. So I'm going to go in and create a new sketch in this unfolded stage. And I'm going to go over to the slot tool. And I'm just going to place a slot in here. Something like that. And then, of course, we got to dimension it. So I'm going to hit D for dimension. And let's just give it a couple of dimensions from the top here. 0.5. Be aware of that new tool I showed you yesterday. If we right click and we select pick circle tangent arc, we can actually now dimension right to the arc. That is awesome. I'm going to use it again. Right click, pick circle tangent arc. You have to be in the dimension tool to get that to work. Okay, let's make this one 2 inches. And we probably also got to put some kind of a thickness on this here. Let's make it 1/2 inch. Okay, so now we kind of like have a slot here. I'm only going to model one of them up and use patterning because I'm going to show you something else cool. Let's go back in here and hide the motor and the exhaust so we make sure we don't cut through it. When I hit the Q for press pull, and let's just cut all the way through like this. So that's kind of like my first opening. You will notice that you don't have a patterning tool inside of the sheet metal workspace. But you know what? It doesn't matter because we can cross work in these different workspaces. So if I go back into the modeling environment, well, in here I do in the create, I have a pattern. So I'm going to select the rectangular pattern and I'm going to select feature here. We have talked about the patterning tool before. I'm going to select the feature. And then I'm going to select a direction for my spacing. I like to do individual spacing here. Let me just drag the handle out so we can kind of like see what we get. Let's put 2.1 between them. I don't know how many we can fit across here, but we can take a look at it. 6 maybe, okay. And let's move down. So let's make that 0.6 maybe. And how many can we do here? 5. Yeah, let's make it 0.65. Spread them out a little bit. What does 7 look like? Yeah, 7 will work. And then you will see here that we actually have some of these that would not work. Well, don't forget that we have this check mark in here. I can just check the ones that I don't want Fusion to put in here for this pattern. So I'm going to hit OK. And, oh, I didn't want the last one either, it looks like. Uncheck that one, that one, that one, and that one. Hit OK with that. That's kind of funny. I'm not looking at where from Checkmarks I'm taking here. I want that one. I want that one, that one, that one. It's like that. You get 3 tries or you fail. Right? I think the last one here is cutting into it too. There we go. So you can actually do this in the modeling space because it knows it still keeps an eye on that refold there. But let's go back into the sheet metal workspace, turn the motor and the exhaust back on, and let's go back into our refolded space. And you will now see that the pattern, because we did that in a folded state, will actually follow the contour around. So that's kind of like how that works. Now I know I'm running up on the half an hour here, so I'm sorry if I'm running a little bit late, but I wanted to show one more example, and that is because it's not only people who are doing sheet metal, like real sheet metal, like the hood on your car or the guard on your lawnmower. You can actually use the sheet metal tool for other things. So you could use it for, I put cardboard box. You could use it for some kind of a plastic. So let's take a quick look at that. So I opened up this part here that some of you guys might have seen before. And what if you had to create a cardboard box and you had to find out kind of like what you needed to cut the cardboard out in to make it look somewhat useful. So the way that these sheet metal rules works is that Fusion already comes with kind of like a created library, but it's not meant as this is the rules. You gotta kind of like define your own. So I can go in here and I can go in and edit a rule, or I can create a new rule. So I'm going to click and create a new rule, and I call this one cardboard. And you can add some kind of a thickness for whatever your cardboard is. And you can add some kind of a K factor, or maybe no K factor for cardboard. I'm not quite sure. You maybe have to play around with that a little bit. Watch the video from last week. You can go in and change all the rules for how this is bending, and that will give you an option to create, use that as your cardboard rule here. So I'm going to go in and open another sketch. I'm going to go in and not making sure I'm making the same mistake I did before. Let's exit out of this. I'm going to create a new component, and this is going to be my box, right? So cardboard box. Sorry, I'm running a little late, guys. If I hadn't messed up in the beginning, man. So now I'm going to create another sketch. I'm going to create that right on the bottom of my part here. And I'm just going to sketch. You should fully define all this. But I'm just going to sketch what I think would be a nice, good box playing around here. And stop the sketch. And I can go in and use, you guessed it, that Flange tool again. So I just select that flange, and as soon as I do that, I get kind of like this new body. I'm going to flip the side over so it's on the outside. And then I can go up and I can change my default steel. So I click Switch Rules. So default is steel in millimeters. And I can scroll down. I can find my cardboard. And as soon as I hit OK, you will see the thickness going to change to a thin cardboard box. And now I will literally use the Flange tool just like you saw before. I can kind of like start modeling things up to, you know, whatever I think will kind of like cover this part here. So I might just go ahead and right click and repeat Flange tool. And I would probably just go and do all four sides. Repeat Flange tool to 46. Right click, repeat Flange tool to 46. And you will see that it's smart enough to kind of like do kind of like the reliefs in here depending on what you are doing. And now we could just start adding the flanges to go around this box, right? So now I just gotta make sure I'm on the outside here, adjacent. I'm out to the, depending on what the radius is, and we can kind of like do one there, repeat flange, do that side there, and of course you should put the dimensions in there. But I hope you can kind of like see how you can use this not just for sheet metal, but we could actually also, you know, use it as a tool for, you know, something like a cardboard box. And then when you have had all the edges and everything laid out of here, then, and you're ready to actually cut it, then you will go to the create flat pattern, and you select the face that you want to be kind of like the bottom, the glue. And when you hit OK, the software is going to make all the calculations, and it will give you this cutout that you can then cut out the cardboard out of. And then when you fold it up, then you will actually end up with that folded box there. And that's actually how I use sheet metal myself. Back when I worked in the shop, we had some parts that we had to do packaging for, and I just went in and used the sheet metal tool to play around with what I thought would be the best packaging, and then I sent it to the company that actually ended up cutting all the cardboard. But this gave me a chance to kind of like play around with it myself. Now, of course, at this point, you could add appearances to it to make it look more like cardbox, whatever you want. All right, I hope that this was useful. Kind of like intro into this Flange tool. Just be aware of, how much that Flange tool can do. Play around with it. See what works for you. Love to get your feedback down in the comment area, of course, and also in the live stream. We're gonna jump in there in a second. If you haven't subscribed, really appreciate it. Thumbs up if you like this stuff. Thumbs down if you don't. Last thing we got to do before we end the live stream is it is Awesome Wednesday. And if you scroll back through the different live streams, you will find that the last few Wednesdays when I've been on, I've done something that I think you might be interested in knowing about. So we talk about Fifth Axis vices, who did a great job creating a little device that is very great for hobbyists or smaller workspaces. Also great for 5-axis work. We talked about John Saunders, my buddy down in Ohio, Jimmy DeResta, talked about Haas, all kinds of ones. Today is my friend Titan Gilroy. And if you're not familiar with Titan, you should definitely check out his website. And even if you are, if you're not aware of his Titan of CNC Academy, you need to check this out. If I go into my website here, if you search Titan of CNC, you need to go and check out Titan. He has a TV show that you can follow, but what is really amazing is he created this free educational platform where you can go in and you can get all kinds of cool 3D model with tutorials and everything. Now, what is really amazing about what Titan did, but I just love when people do something and you're thinking, man, why didn't I think of this? What Titan did that is so different than anything else I've seen is that he really did this for kind of high schools or schools in principle, that most of his parts are at about the same size. So a teacher at a school can order one size stock, and having that one size stock and just like a handful of standard tooling on hand, they can make like hundreds of different types of parts. How brilliant is that? And all that is available. Let me switch back to his website on Titan of CNC. This academy, you can go in and check out all these cool models with tutorials where he goes through how to do them, how to machine them, and there is all kinds of fantastic stuff in here. Now, another thing that Titan did that really is kind of like starting blowing up, on Facebook, he started a group called Titan of CNC Academy. And you can see here, I am part of it. And man, after I joined this group, I mean, people are sharing so much knowledge on there. It's all free. There's no charge. It's definitely worth to check out Titans of CNC. I did leave the link for his website down in the description area, so you can definitely go down there and click on the link. Check out Titan. He's a great guy who does a lot for education, but I absolutely love. So that is where we're going to end today's live stream. I hope you got something out of it. You got a little bit of a taste of the sheet metal tool. Remember, even if you don't do sheet metal, if you just want to bend some plastic or some cardboard or something else, you should definitely take this awesome tool for a spin. Tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of tips and tricks if you're coming from another CAM system into Fusion. So I had a guy a while back who asked me, he came from Mastercam and he wanted to move into Fusion. I was kind of like, what are some of the things you should know about? So that is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. We're going to talk about the measuring tool, about importing models. We're going to talk about applying some of your tool path, about adaptive clearing. So we're going to cover all that tomorrow. So I'm going to end the broadcast here. If you're watching the recording, thank you so much. Hope to thank you for taking the time. Hope you see you again. And I'm going to jump into the live stream and say hi to everybody. Until the next time, have an awesome, awesome day.